Now we'll welcome Southeastern Conference Commissioner Greg Sankey to the podium. Greg?
No applause is necessary. That was an accident, I'm sure. Good morning. I'm going to go off script, which will make my staff nervous. 3 points of recognition this morning. I've often thought we should have a media hustle award, but I'm not really confident in what behavior that may encourage. So I want to give my first shout out to George Somerville, who I was interacting with on Twitter, College Football Chaps podcast, getting here from London. So George, you're first. Second is a guy named Ben Burnell, I think, who captured me for the first interview of SEC Football Media Days yesterday in Utica, New York, right at the finish line of a 15K, which is a new level of hustle being tracked with your race results. And the third would go to Nick Saban, who apparently was denied access because he didn't have his credential this morning and had to go back to his room. So we teach those lessons quickly. It's great for us, though, to be here in Dallas, Texas for the SEC's 2024 version of Football Media Days. We're thrilled to be in a city where Dak is the quarterback, where the Dallas Mavericks made a run to the NBA Finals with a number of players from the SEC, including Kentucky's PJ Washington's, Arkansas's Daniel Gafford, and South Carolina's AJ Lawson, where our 2019 Women's Basketball Player of the Year and Mississippi State alum Tiara McCown is part of the Dallas Wings, where over in Arlington, Florida's Wyatt Langford is having an impact in his rookie season for the Texas Rangers. And tomorrow night in Globe Life Field, Paul Skeens from LSU, now Pittsburgh Pirate, will take the mound as the starting pitcher for the National League in the All-Star game. To build my local credibility, back in 1991, I was here in Dallas for a set of meetings. I was with Bobby Williams, who's now the athletics director at Sam Houston State University, and we said, hey, you want to go out to Arlington Stadium? Those of you who are locals will remember Arlington Stadium, before the ballpark and before Globe Life Field. Nolan Ryan was pitching that night against the Toronto Blue Jays, and I brought, just to prove my credibility, the ticket from his 7th no-hitter that I attended while I lived here in Dallas, because I spent 11 great years of my career here. Our 2 daughters were born just north in McKinney, Texas. I occupied offices along North Central Expressway when I worked for the Southland Conference, and it's great to be back in Texas representing the 16 universities of the Southeastern Conference, and following a video that began with words like Billy Cannon running, Manning rolling, Manning looking. It was Archie Manning back in 1969 in Legion Field on a game, the first televised Saturday night game we had on ABC. It's Larry Munson yelling for Lindsey Scott. It's a statement that here, history runs deep. And then you saw Pat, as in Pat Summitt, and Perry, as in Perry Wallace, and Goose Givens shooting over Duke in the 1978 Final Four. And you heard 3 words: passion, rivalry, family. You saw confettis, you saw trophies, you saw champions, you saw celebrations, you saw a quarterback leading the marching band, and you saw Olympic medalist after Olympic medalist. That's the imagery to which we're accustomed in the SEC. And then you saw something new. You saw Bevo, and you saw the Sooner Schooner. And you heard from 14 deep to 16 strong. 16 is our today, and 16 is our tomorrow. Those 16 universities represent a currently enrolled student body of right at 500,000, a global network of 5 million living alums and former students, direct local economic and state impact exceeding $100 billion annually, a number that will continue to grow. And the innovative nature of these universities has caused us in the Southeastern Conference, through the collective campus work, to be the first collegiate athletic conference to convene an artificial intelligence consortium. that's already creating research and collaboration and programming partnerships, including a faculty education program about how you manage artificial intelligence in the university learning environment. We've already engaged over 1,000 of our faculty in education around that important topic, a new topic, an emerging topic in which we intend to lead as campuses. We also gather Thursday here at Football Media Days to hear from a panel labeled Artificial Intelligence in Sports panel that takes place, and I encourage you to join in that opportunity. And staying in the technology sector with the changes taking place in college football, I'm pleased to acknowledge that as we explore new ways to use technology in our competitive experience and competitive experiences and to advance the sport of football, we're proud to work with Apple to introduce iPads for sideline use during the upcoming football season to elevate the performance of our student athletes. You know, the college football rule change that's gone into effect this fall permits teams to use this video resource, and the large multi-touch display of an iPad combined with its amazing performance and incredible portability, I know has benefited me on a daily basis, and it makes it the ideal solution for our coaches and student athletes to use in-game video efficiently. The now 16 athletic programs in the SEC last year earned 11 total national championships. The SEC is the only conference to participate in every one of the 4-team college football playoffs. For the 18th consecutive year, we led all leagues with the most NFL players drafted at 59. We're excited about this year's College Football Hall of Fame inductees that include Kentucky's Tim Couch, Arkansas's Dan Hampton, Alabama's Antonio Langham, and Texas A&M's Kevin Smith. And we're pleased to celebrate with new member, University of Oklahoma, the induction of Dewey Selman, who's both an Oklahoma legend and the father of Mississippi State University Athletic Director Zach Selman. In the NBA playoffs that I mentioned a moment ago, players who had played on SEC teams were represented in a greater number than any other conference with 49. 1/3 of this year's WNBA All-Star roster are from the SEC. For the 2024 Major League Baseball season, we had 88 players on opening day rosters, and yesterday saw 20 players taken in this year's Major League Baseball draft. You're probably tired of hearing me say it, but those numbers are the most of any conference. For the 25th straight year, we led the nation in football attendance. For the 28th consecutive year, we led the nation in college baseball attendance, having 8 of the top 10 attendance leaders in 2024. Our softball already led the nation in attendance, nearly doubling the next closest conference. The same is true in women's gymnastics. And one of the growth sports for us, women's soccer, led in both average and total attendance during the 2023 season across the country. We're also proud to have finished yet again with another SEC versus SEC College World Series championship final this year. It was Tennessee and Texas A&M, the 6th overall SEC versus SEC baseball final, the 3rd in the past 4 years, but if you adjust our membership, and remember, it was Oklahoma and Ole Miss a few years ago, SEC teams have been consistently filling the national championship series. There's a total of 21 times across all sports where a national championship, like women's tennis this year between Georgia and Texas A&M, involved 2 SEC teams. When we look ahead to the Paris Olympic Games, there are a total of 270 Olympians with SEC ties. 85 will populate the Team USA roster. 42 of those U.S. Olympians are returning Olympic competitors, and 43 will be first-time Olympians. And we will have every one of our 16 universities represented on the U.S. Olympic roster. And that roster in U.S. track and field includes 35% of that roster being comprised of representatives from SEC universities. In swimming and diving, it's 37% of that roster. And we will have representatives on all 4 of the U.S. Olympic basketball teams, the men's basketball 5-on-5 team, the women's basketball 5-on-5 team, and the same in both the men's and women's 3-on-3 teams. But let's go back for a moment to our opening video. And while I'd rather talk about all-stars and champions and Olympians, I want to focus on some words you probably missed. We said in that video that was used to celebrate the additions of Oklahoma and Texas as new members just a few weeks ago, that it's time to update. It's time to update your expectations for what college athletics can be. And many of you have written or opined about this being a unique time for college athletics. Time for movement, obviously, and a time of change. And we as leaders are responsible for navigating what really are, for us in college sports, uncharted waters of change. And we're doing so at a time when the pressures to recruit, to win, to draw people in are just as high as they've ever been. But we've added a set of external factors: the litigation that presses in, state-level legislation, conversations with Congress, and the emergence of the next great idea that is sold or pitched as something that will quickly and fully resolve the issues currently faced in college sports. But the reality is, there is no easy button we can just go push to resolve the issues we face. And there's no magic pill. And any time you go through a reset, it is difficult. This past Saturday evening, we were reminded of the stress and divisiveness that's present in our nation, well beyond any playing field. We know that elections are fundamental in these United States of America, and none of us are expected to all agree on how votes should be cast. In fact, probably most of us try to avoid those conversations at family gatherings. We'd rather talk about the weather, talk about how the kids or the grandkids are doing in school, where somebody's going on vacation, or maybe who's going to win the game on the upcoming Saturday. When you attend one of those games on Saturday and you look around, you see Democrats and you see Republicans. You see liberals and conservatives. You see those who work in a white-collar setting and those who work in a blue-collar setting. You see young and old, families and individuals, people from every religious background, every demographic range in this nation. And this sidebar is not about politics. It's actually about what we do on Saturday, that comfortable point of conversation at those family gatherings. These remarks are about the ability of people to come together even when there are differences. And on Saturdays in this country, for decade after decade, people come together. We actually need more of what we do in college sports. And in college sports, and in college football in particular, we know, there's an opponent on the field, and spread across a stadium, there's apparel from the opposing teams, one dominant, one in the minority. But in those stadiums, I've stood with sometimes 100,000 or more to sing the national anthem, sometimes thinking that the entire stadium is actually participating. I've joined in those stadiums as you watch maybe a Chinook helicopter fly over, a B-2 bomber, or an F-22, just amazed. And then celebrated a little bit later in the game, when during a break we stop and we bring the flight crew onto the field and celebrate them for their service. I've heard the absolute silence in a crowd of thousands of people revved up and ready to go, who stand for a moment to honor someone we've lost. We actually need more of those unifying moments in this country, and that's why I say again, we need more of what college football does in this nation, not less. We need more of what college sports does, because that unity I talked about and those variances that exist within a crowd aren't just in a football stadium. You see them at baseball games and basketball games and along all of those sports that I cited just a moment ago. In fact, if you drove in on a morning to Hoover, Alabama, to our baseball tournament, you would see tents pitched with university logos and colors of a particular fan base. And it's not long before somebody else starts to trickle in. And I can recall this year seeing a South Carolina tent pitched right as I drove in, and underneath there are Vanderbilt fans and Tennessee fans gathered having a conversation. They're actually smiling despite being dressed differently. Under an Auburn tent, Florida fans and Georgia fans gather for those same conversations. That's the reality that we need and the lessons that we can learn through college sports. We need more of those unifying moments. And again, I'll say we need more of what college football and college sports does and can do, because we're at a time filled with uncertainty. And that exists in our culture in a big picture, and it exists in college sports. On May 23rd, the plaintiffs, in a set of lawsuits along with the NCAA, the ACC, the Big Ten, Big 12, SEC, and Pac-12 announced agreement on terms of a settlement related to a set of lawsuits. And while that agreement does not resolve every issue and it is not a finish line, it does provide an opportunity for us to move forward in modernizing important elements of college sports. There's a lot of work still to be done. There's work to finalize the full terms of a settlement agreement. Beyond just terms is the hard work of implementing the outcome of that agreement. We are literally working to make what would normally be a decade's worth of change in a matter of months. We're not in a world either where we're allowed to focus on just one issue or even one small set of issues at any particular time. As you know, there are other lawsuits. We have state attorneys general that have engaged in lawsuits against the NCAA. We have state legislatures continuing to enact or change laws that govern how we conduct college athletics. There are outside ideas that come from those apparently associated with private equity firms, professional leagues, search firms, former executives from leading media companies who want to insert their thinking. We have new wave entrepreneurs who want to be in on the so-called front end of a new paradigm for college athletics. But it's our leadership responsibility to figure this out. And in a moment, I'm going to repeat some things I've repeated in past years. And you could rightly, potentially say, well, there he goes again. But you know what? Change doesn't happen in an instant. And we're dealing with an incredibly complex set of issues that when I sit down with some of those leaders in the areas that I mentioned, and I describe the various challenges we face, it is universal. Whether it's a professional league commissioner, a member of Congress, a high-level attorney, at some point they'll look at me and say, that's the most complicated situation I've ever heard. That's why there's no easy button. But we have the responsibility on our university campuses to constantly be evaluating and exploring the best partnerships and innovations that protect the collective interests of our universities while also tackling new legal and political realities. But you know what? We also have to do that in a way that continues to engage with our fans, that continues to honor the traditions that are important to our campuses and our communities. And yes, we're going to seek to capitalize on new revenue opportunities that support our athletics programs and our student-athlete participants. We've been incredibly successful, and I understand why so many outside of the campus and conference realm are interested in coming in and being a part of it. But that responsibility lies with us to bring people into the solution, not to cede authority to external actors. We know who we are. In the Southeastern Conference, we're the one conference at this level where the name still means something. The southeastern part of the United States, where when we expanded, we actually restored historic rivalries while adding only 100 miles to the longest campus-to-campus trip our student athletes will experience. We're a conference where in survey after survey, we have the most avid fans by comparison. Not just the most draft picks, not just the most teams in a championship, but the people around our programs who want us to lead. Again, not give authority away. They're passionate about their team and the competition among their team and their rivals in the Southeastern Conference. We have dates that have meaning, that we understand in this culture. They're passionate about those longtime rivalries, passionate about the opportunity to spend a Saturday in their favorite football stadium, maybe visit a new place, or maybe from time to time tour all the stadiums in the SEC. We in the SEC, we know the importance of education, what it can mean in the life of a young person. You know what? There's more money involved. We also know that there's more graduation success involved, and there's more opportunities to bring people back who may have left after their playing experience was complete without finishing their degree. Nobody needs to tell us to provide that opportunity. That's who we are. The number of former competitors I encounter, whether they're Olympians now or professional athletes who had an SEC playing experience, maybe they're on the sideline to be presented an award or just to be honored for what they contributed to that campus. Frequently I'll ask, well, why did you decide to come back? And with the same level of frequency, those young people tell me, this became home. That doesn't happen with some set of abstract ideas. It happens because there was something very different about college athletics in the Southeastern Conference than there is at the professional level. We know we have a responsibility to deal with our shortcomings. We know we have to act to solve our own problems, and we're doing that just now. But we want the college football playoff. America wants the Final Four. We desire a college World Series or a college cup, and to do so, we need national standards. And here's where I restate some things I've said before. And I'm actually the voice of our student athletes because they have said over and over, we deserve better as student athletes than to have a patchwork of state laws that tell us how to manage our name, image, and likeness. We deserve better than a race to the bottom for competitive purposes on a state-by-state basis. And we as student athletes want to know when we line up for a kickoff, tip-off in a basketball game, first pitch in a softball or baseball game, that the people occupying the other uniforms are governed by the same set of standards governing us. We've also experienced change in sports gambling, and we've seen some really difficult stories play out at the professional level where people have lost their careers. Last year I spoke about a head coach who had lost an opportunity in our own league. And I'll say again, it's not good enough for states just to allow legalized sports gambling. They owe protection to the participants. And the online and direct pressures that come from those who aren't successful in their gambling decisions affect our participants. In every state that has legalized sports gambling needs to put in place clearly stated laws that protect participants from hostile behavior. We're going to continue our dialogue with Congress. Again, we're going to have to make decisions on our own. We have to do those with the right legal counsel. But Congress is a place that can help set national standards and address the issues our student athletes have raised. We're not waiting for change to land in our laps. We have a responsibility to engage with our congressional leaders. Our leaders are elected to lead, and I appreciate those conversations. But on behalf of the now over 8,000 student athletes in the Southeastern Conference, the future doctors and lawyers and engineers and teachers and nurses and real estate agents, the leaders of tomorrow, my ask again is that Congress continue not only to engage in conversation, but help with us resolve some of these outstanding issues and restore clear national standards for college athletics. I told you earlier it's good to be in Dallas. I hope you have four great days. I'm going to shift from the heavy to just acknowledge a few things. First, thanks to our SEC staff. You have no idea. You don't just show up and make this work. We're a great group of volunteers that want to make sure you have a successful and productive 4 days, so please ask if we can be of help. When you move these events around, it's not done often. We were the first. We've done it the most. We appreciate some of our local hosts here. The Goodyear Cotton Bowl, Rick Baker's leadership and friendship, Michael Conradi, Marty McGinnis, and others on that staff. Since we're in Dallas, and I referenced my Southland Conference days, I began a long time ago flying Southwest Airlines, and Southwest is housed here, and we announced that they are the official airline of the Southeastern Conference last week. Recognize and thank them. We appreciate the Dallas Sports Commission and the leadership of Monica Paul, their help to get us here, but also how we light up the skyline with the SEC theme throughout the week. The Omni Dallas and Guadalupe Ruta, Courtney Roy, and the entire team here. Also Anthony Travel and John Anthony for actually securing us a location. I'm also going to announce a little bit of news. It's a little bit of news. We've moved around from Birmingham to Atlanta to Nashville and now Dallas. And in 2025, we're going to return to Atlanta in the College Football Hall of Fame with our football media days. I also want to say thank you to Regions Bank, who is a year-long sponsor, but the sponsor of our media days. They also played a key role in something called SEC Startup. I promise you, I'm almost at the end, so I'll catch you on this one. This is a competitive business pitch competition among our student athletes who are the future entrepreneurs. They make a presentation and a pitch competition with their business concepts presented and reviewed by a panel of judges. It will be shown on a program tonight on the SEC Network at 7 Eastern, SEC Startups Debut. It includes student-athlete entrepreneurs from Auburn, Florida, Missouri, and Oklahoma, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the SEC Network. We're about to jump into questions. I'm going to go back and say there's a lot that's happening. There's a lot that could cause us to say, wow, where's the hope in this? Where's the finish line? I actually sometimes think finish lines are too much of a focus because we have to look to the future. And as much as there may be that's viewed as problematic, those successes I mentioned just scratch the surface. We haven't told a lot of individual stories, but they're there. And I'm optimistic about our future because I get to spend time with the leaders in the Southeastern Conference, the leaders today and the young people who will be leaders tomorrow, which is why through all of this change, I'm convinced our best days are still ahead.
Presented by Goodwyn Mills Cawood. Learn more at gmcnetwork.com.